There are 10 putters in the Scotty Cameron Super Select range. So what are they and what are the differences and which one will be right for your game? Let's go find out. First up we have the Super Select Newport. This is that very traditional blade shaping, but actually it has a lot more curves than we'd see in, say, the Newport 2. So over the ball it actually looks a lot softer in terms of shaping, especially at the edges. Now this comes with this like L neck or crank neck as some people call it, or maybe even a plumber's neck. And that's kind of designed for people with like a moderate arc, but someone who wants something that'll help square the face up a little bit. Seems to work pretty nicely. Now all of these are milled from 303 stainless steel, and really the big focus here is on that kind of feel, how soft it is off the face. That felt really soft to release, and also just visually on how it looks. Scotty puts a massive emphasis almost on the art of putting rather than the science, so it's really about how it looks behind the golf ball and finding a model that really suits your eye. Now obviously this is a pretty small blade, so it's not necessarily going to be the most forgiving in the range, but it's definitely for someone who feels pretty confident with their putting and likes something that looks really traditional. Now out of the traditional blades in this range, I actually gave him a Newport 2. And I like this because it has kind of crisper, more square lines behind it. So I feel like when I'm lining that up behind the golf ball, there's kind of a lot more to help in terms of alignment and just framing the line of the ball. Now this comes with the same neck bend, so it's going to suit a similar profile of player. One thing you'll notice with a lot of these is they don't have a line on the top line. They actually have it kind of more back in the cavity. So if you're someone who uses the line on the ball, that's something to consider, but I do use a line on my golf ball and still find you can match it up pretty well. And I actually really like the contrast of the top line being blank, because it means you get this almost parallel line to see if your face is square. Now if you're someone who really loves a blade but think, I should probably have something a little bit more forgiving, we have both of these in what's called a plus model, and these are just slightly wider than the traditional ones, so it's giving you a little bit more MY, a little bit more forgiveness, especially probably on those pace putts, but you're not losing too much of that traditional shaping if that's something you really like. Now again, both of these come with that L neck, so it's probably someone with a moderate arc that's going to end up using these. Now if you love a blade but you're someone who wants a little bit more toe flow, this short slant neck is really going to help provide that. So this is the Newport 2.5 Plus. So again, it's a little bit thicker than we see in the really small blades. Anything that's a 0.5 means it has this smaller neck that gives you more toe flow. So it's perfect for someone who has maybe a bigger arc and wants something that's going to square up a little bit more. Now again, this is very like the Newport 2 that I use, in the sense that you've got those really angular lines again, so if you're someone that likes that visual to the ball, this could be something that really suits you. So last up in what I would classify as kind of the blade category is this square back, and it's quite interesting if we compare it to like the Newport 2 Plus. You can see it's just a little bit thicker. So again, if you're someone who wants something a bit larger behind the golf ball, something that's a little bit more confidence inspiring, you feel like if you misstrike it, it's going to help you a little bit more, this would work really nicely. Now this goes back to that L neck, so again for someone who doesn't have quite as big of an arc. Now what I also really like in this Scotty range is this Pistolini grip they have. So you can see how it kind of curves off at the top. And I think that just sits really nicely in the hand and kind of helps reduce like too much hand movement through the stroke. Now if you're someone who wants a bit more of a mallet but you're also someone with a big arc, this Del Mar could work really nicely. Now this reminds me of one of the old Scotty Californias I have, and it definitely feels like it arcs a lot more as soon as you use this. This isn't necessarily something that would suit my stroke, but actually in terms of the shaping, I think it sits really nicely behind the golf ball. It's quite nice to have this big cavity in the back that frames the golf ball, and then that rounder shape at the back. I think what Scotty does so well is the simplicity of all the shaping and the different milling and just how neat this looks behind the golf ball. It really just gives you like, narrows your focus down and focuses you on the putt. Next up we've got the Fastback 1.5, which has that really traditional kind of D shaping which we see a lot of on tour. You'll also note here the kind of aluminium plating in the bottom is getting a lot bigger at this point in the range, and that's really distributing that weight maximally and getting the most MOI and the most forgiveness. Now we do have that in the blades, so there is a little bit of added forgiveness, but obviously when you get here and it's a bit bigger and it can move more weight, it's going to help more. Now again, this is a mallet design with a short flow neck, so it's really going to give you a little bit of help if you have an arcing stroke. Never out, never in. I really like how Scotty's kind of combined those like classical themes of like the very precise top line, the framing of the golf ball into a mallet without it feeling really big. I think that's a big win for someone who wants something traditional but wants that extra forgiveness. So last up we've got the Go Low 6 and the Go Low 6.5. You can see both of these are the same head shape, but we have those two different neck options. This is going to be much more face balanced, so for someone who has a more straighter arc and wants something that kind of the face stays square to the target as long as possible. And this has got that short flow neck, so you're going to get a little bit more face rotation maybe for someone with a bigger arc. I personally prefer something face balanced, so let's go for this one. Now it's pretty interesting because this one definitely has the longest alignment line, which I think some people visually prefer to see a lot more line behind the golf ball. It helps line them up. But also we've got a lot more kind of texturing on the back here, which I think sits really nicely. It's worth noting in all of these models as well, there's adjustable weights on the sole. So if you go for a Scotty Cameron fit-in and you feel like you want it to be a little bit heavier or lighter, this can be adjusted to really dial in that feel to what you prefer. So definitely a massive variety of options in this range. I think the biggest thing is going out and trying all these different neck options and seeing which kind of matches into your stroke the best and which one helps you start putts on line more. What I like is there's that real continuity. It's very simple in terms of its design, similar top lines, similar alignment aids. So in terms of like visuals, you're not really having to kind of sacrifice a lot. If you're someone who wants something traditional, there's kind of a model that's going to suit everyone.